Isn't liberty an offshoot of power? This is where actually my thinking and my writing differs from all these people who came before. And I'm saying, wait a minute, you're really all talking about power. My power as the sovereign of me and power that others have. Isn't the debate really over power? What kind of power is acceptable and what kind of power is not acceptable? Hence the book on power, and I do this with the issue of rights. And I say, they're talking about negative liberty, positive liberty. My liberty is complete unless it interferes with somebody else's liberty. What about somebody else's liberty? And I'm saying what we need to be focused on is defining power. There was Isaiah Berlin, a brilliant man. All these men were brilliant, who in 1958 delivered a lecture at Oxford University and later wrote a book that nerds like me consider a very famous book on what he called the two concepts of liberty. Wow, now we're getting somewhere. I mention it because it has a wide embrace among scholars. Berlin creates two categories of liberty. One that emphasizes individual liberty or the liberty of the people, the sovereign. And another that emphasizes government's role in securing liberty for the individual or the people, but also creates the conditions for tyranny. He assigns the former the name negative liberty because it lacks external coercion, freedom from interference. And the latter, positive liberty, because the issue is what kind of control is placed on the individual and his freedom. That is, limitations placed on the individual by the broader society or government. I know this is getting heady, but when you read it, it's much more retainable. Here I think he kind of flips the notion of negative and positive liberty. That's just me. But let's pursue this. Berlin writes that there are at least two senses of the word liberty, which few would deny to be central, or at least two criteria which determine whether a man or a nation or a group is free or not. The first, which I shall call negative sense or criterion, is the answer to the question, what is the area within which the subject, a person or group of persons, is left to do what they like without control by other persons? So he's taking this notion from Mill and he's saying, okay, so what is that circle? And what's in that circle for the individual or group of individuals where they ought not be molested by any other outside force or government? He says the second is the answer to the question, what is the source of control? What is the source of this power? When it exists, which can prevent someone from doing what he wishes. Okay, so now it's to prevent somebody from doing what he wishes that may affect the liberty of others. He says to say that there is only one sense of the word freedom, but two criteria for its determination seems to me, he says, merely a confusion. For the two questions seem generally different, even though the answers to them may overlap. He doesn't mention Mill by name, but he's clearly referencing him. He says, okay, great. You got the circle of liberty. We're not sure what's in it. And then the next question is, well, who determines that? And what kind of enforcement measures will there be? Berlin then discusses at length the nuances of each category, effectively moving in and out of what I see as subcategories of both positive and negative liberty. That is, the degree to which one or the other secures, expands, or diminishes individual liberty, the degree to which the individual is free to act, and the degree to which society, or even more the government, is free to act against that individual's exercise of liberty. So here's what I say about it. Berlin essentially repackages most of what we understand to be liberty versus tyranny, and the endless degrees to which one seems to grow or shrink at the hands of the other. So he's really trying to figure this out. He's talking about individual liberty, how much should there be, how much can there be, how much really would there be, and then he's trying to figure out the other circle, which is, okay, we talk about the need for this, I'll call it order. Order, societal order, governmental order. And he does note that that second has the power to create these kinds of Marxist tyrannies and so forth, and is exercised to do so. And so I point out his concept of positive liberty has less to do with liberty and more to do with, in the first instance, power. In fact, I go further. In my view, it is more useful and accurate to take on the subject of power in its basic forms. Okay, everybody's debating, what does this word liberty mean? And where does liberty begin and where does it end? And I'm saying, isn't liberty an offshoot of power? Isn't it an offshoot of power? This is where actually my thinking and my writing differs from all these people who came before. And I'm saying, wait a minute. You're really all talking about power. My power as the sovereign of me and power that others have. Isn't the debate really over power? What kind of power is acceptable and what kind of power is not acceptable? Hence the book on power, and I do this with the issue of rights and language and so forth and so on. But let's stick with this one chapter, chapter 6, which is complicated enough. And I say, they're talking about negative liberty, positive liberty. My liberty is complete unless it interferes with somebody else's liberty. What about somebody else's liberty? And I'm saying, what we need to be focused on is defining power, not liberty.
For all this and much more, sign up for Levin TV.